They've got like a big glass corridor inside the training pitch, and they would see the first team players walk out to training as they are training. And then a couple of the players would pop in after training to kick a ball around with them, or Pep would walk in and give them all a high five. Like, you can imagine the impact. I think, to be fair, I was able to fall back on the things that got is trained into me from my mentors and from Titi, in terms of it's the person first, like focus on the player, connect with the player, work out what makes them angry, what makes them motivated, what makes them want to play for you.
Quick shout out to today's sponsor, Taylor. You know that feeling? You've got an important meeting, a first date, maybe a trip coming up, and you're standing in front of your closet thinking, I have nothing to wear, or I don't want to wear the same thing again, even though it's full of stuff. That's exactly what Taylor fixes. A real stylist learns your lifestyle, picks your outfits, and ships them to your door every month. You wear them, send them back, and they handle the rest. No shopping, no laundry, no stress. Head to tailor.style, taelor.style, and use code ERIC25 for $25 off your first month. Link in the description below. Ollie, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Great to be on, and I know that we've spoken over the last few months, and finally we're here.
Yeah, definitely. Long time in the making for sure. Both as Ollie will talk about, both in the soccer or football coaching world, depending on where you're listening. Yeah, so this will be a great conversation. Excited to pick your brain on some of the things that you got going on and things that work for you, maybe don't work for you, and all the above. But do you want to do a quick intro for the people, who you are, what you do, and then we'll hop into the rest of it?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, a football coach for 15 years, from everything from Man City Academy to time over in China as a first team manager, and some time over in Barcelona as well. So, there is very little that I haven't done within the game, from 18-month-year-old all the way up to adult football. So, I currently academy coach and working for Stronger Youth Brands for their curriculum development.
Very nice. Question from the last guest is, what are you doing to leave your family a legacy?
Oh, that's a big start, isn't it?
Yeah.
What am I doing to leave them a legacy? I think just living by values, right? Just living by values, making sure that um, living true to myself and making sure that they have the same sort of values to move forward with what they want to do.
Very nice. That's a great answer. So, on that, I guess probably you've had the same sort of principles and values that have taken you through your career, but just from as we spoke before, and one of the things that is most interesting to me, at least, is your experience as within the professional game as a coach. And I want to start with City, just because it's the academy, and then we can get up to like the first team stuff that you were doing later, as kind of along the lines of the progression of the player as they go from the academy into the first team. But
Yeah,
your experience at City, I mean, I don't even know what to ask, to be honest, because I have no idea what it's like in there. People, I'm sure, have seen the All or Nothing documentaries on City or Spurs or these other like Premier League teams, and they see the meetings and the training grounds and the crazy guys pulling up in Lamborghinis and the rest. But the academy, I'm sure, is slightly different from that. So just, I mean, I don't even know where to start. But you tell me, like, what was your experience like within that, and what was the time frame, so people listening who maybe are football fans understand like the manager and what was going on with the first team at the time.
yeah, for sure. So I think the first two words that pop to mind are world leading. And I think that was something that was kind of drilled into the culture, the environment. Everything was about everybody taking responsibility for every action and making sure that we are striving to be world leading in everything that we do, from the academy all the way up to the first team. So they really did create that environment. It was a best with best environment. It was there to develop young people on and off the pitch and to give them the best possible journey within football, whatever that journey might look like. Now, over the time there, we were extremely successful as a club as a whole, in terms of the first team players that were going all the way through up until from the academy to the first team. But it's also about people off the pitch and developing that whole character and making sure that there was opportunities outside of Man City also. That's something that the club pushed really, really hard. So yeah, I mean, what did it look like from a journey, from my point of view? I actually started off volunteering over in Abu Dhabi. That's where I started. So I made some connections out there. I went and spent a couple of days with the team out there, and just wanted to immerse myself in an environment surrounded by better coaches. And I wanted to try and plan out and map out a career within academy football. So I would have been around 16, Eric, at the time there of over in Abu Dhabi, and just kind of volunteering, learning, surrounding myself with better people, having a look at what I could do. And then it wasn't until then I came back to Manchester, and then I started to shadow the sessions and kind of observe and try and get involved. That then I finally got thrown the opportunity to jump on and coach some of the under sixes at the time, and then the under 14 select team on the same night. And then the rest is history, as they say.
So that's interesting that you mentioned the immersion piece because I had a coach on, Philip Vonk, a couple weeks ago, who said the exact same thing when I asked him as far as advice about people wanting a career in football, regardless of if it's playing or not. And that was exactly what he said, is to immerse yourself in it. And he did a lot of things for free, volunteered exactly the same as you just mentioned. When you're 16, 17, how do you even figure out like, yeah, I'm gonna go like how did that opportunity even come about? Is that you putting yourself out there, or did you have some sort of a connection, or like how did that work?
Yeah, really good question. And I think you're right. I think that word immerse is exactly what you've got to do. You've got to become addicted with trying to become the best and trying to map out that career. And you've got to work hard, and you've got to network for those opportunities to appear. And then you've got to be ready for when those opportunities do appear. What did it look like at the start for me then? So I knew that I wanted to go into football coaching. I started to do my level one and level two qualifications with the FA, and I was looking for part-time roles. So within the first couple of years of me being a coach, and this was kind of 15, 16 now that we're talking, in that build up to me getting the opportunity at City, I did around six coaching jobs. So they were all part time. It was in schools, it was after school clubs, lunchtime clubs, open age football. Um, Anything that you can imagine there. And then I actually applied for my first part-time role with a company called Little Kickers, and that's where I started. And again, that's I'm still connected with them, and that's where I still spend a lot of my time with coach development and curriculum side of things now. But I got an opportunity to be paid to coach and to coach every single week, and that was the key. That I was on the pitch in different environments, like we use that word immerse. I immersed myself in being on the pitch. And then on the outside of that, I was networking, I was watching better coaches, I was making sure that I was doing my qualifications. But the thing that really wrapped it all up was time on the pitch, crafting your skills, knowing how to coach and what that looked like. And then it was the network. So I got fortunate that somebody that worked in the gym where I trained, they put me in touch with somebody that had had a career as an academy coach at City, and I started to pick his brains. So he sat me down, we had a coffee, we wrote out like a 3 year plan of this is what you're going to need to do, this is what you're going to have to qualifications, jobs, coaching experience, go and make it happen. And I followed that plan.
So at what point, what kind of time frame is this? Is this Mancini or is Pep there yet? Or
Yeah, so I was fortunate that actually where I was at the new training ground, so Mancini was there, and then my first involvement was at the new facilities. So right opposite the Etihad, City are kind of spending huge amount of funding on the academy, and the infrastructure is growing very quickly. And again, like I mentioned, they already had the connections out in Abu Dhabi, and that's where I got that first work experience option.
so do they give you like, speaking from kind of some experience, having played in some other countries on trial and things like that, like Mexico, for instance, the curriculum, there's like a curriculum that has like the national team has a style, and that style is kind of percolated throughout the clubs, and then all the players are sort of brought up in that way. England, I would imagine, is slightly different given the amount of like different nationalities that are coaching the different, especially in the Premier League. Like where, so when you're coaching the under 14s, are you preparing in the same way that the first team is wanting to prepare, especially given like at this point Pep's been there for I don't know like 8, 10 years, something like that. So like has that philosophy like kind of trickled down into the youth teams, or do you have a bit more freedom? Like how does that work when because you obviously have your players and your players need to develop at the ways that they can develop, but I would imagine also once they get to U16s, U18s, they need to be ready or familiar with the style should they be called upon to get into the first team? So like how does that balance work?
Yeah, really good question. I think freedom within the framework jumps to mind. Like when I listen to that question, it's like freedom within the framework is something that was discussed a lot around the coaches that I was working with. I was fortunate enough to be working along world-class people in their role, right? Right from the top of the academy all the way down to the pre-academy and the foundation phase age groups that I was doing. And you're right, it does trickle down. I think something that a coach kind of drilled into me in my first couple of seasons there was your role as a pre-academy coach at the time was to get the group ready for the next age group. So if I was working with the eights, my sole purpose was to make sure that the players were fully equipped and had everything they needed to be successful for the under nines. And it was just that chain all the way up. But you're right, the program flowed down. So there were certain principles, there were certain behaviors, there was certain a way of doing things. There was a culture. This is how we do it. This is how we play. This is what we want to train like, and that was trickled down from the people at the top. And again, they did a fantastic job of putting together a world leading program and trickling that down, and then upskilling the coaches to be able to deliver that to a top level.
So were you okay, so as far as getting the group prepared for the next age group, how is that defined? Because I'm going through some of my coaching badges myself within the U.S. soccer framework, and they've got certain principles and things that they want, and certain definitions and certain kind of principles and practices that they want to be used by their coaches. But for you guys, how is that how is that defined? Do you get and this is kind of going into the weeds. So for people listening who don't care about the nitty-gritty of coaching, sorry, but I'm curious. So, but like, how is that defined? And as you're going through your qualifications in with the FA, like, how are those two things mixed? Because I'd imagine you're getting a coach's education from City, and then also you're doing your badges at the same time. So, like, where does that mix, and like, what's the balancing there?
Yeah, again, really good question. I think it's hard to balance those. There was very different approaches, and even if you just compare the programs at different clubs, so northwest of England where we were, you had Man United, Man City, Liverpool as like the three big ones. All do things in a very very different way, but all are world class at what they do and all produce top talent. So it's not necessarily where they meet. I think you can take things from both, but it was very very clear that Man City had a way of doing things. It was their culture, their program, and you were to fit into that, and you had to operate in the way that they wanted you to operate in. Yes, you could take things from the FA, but it was very much seen as it was always referred to me as like a driving test, right? You need your qualifications, and that's your driving license. You have to secure them to get opportunities within the game. But once you've got your qualifications, you actually have to go away and start to experiment, make mistakes, fit into the culture, learn from people around you, know how to bring some of that knowledge that is relevant into your world as a coach in that moment. And the other bits of knowledge you might leave and come back to later, or just leave altogether. That was kind of the balancing act.
Mm.
As a
Let me
young coach,
let me rephrase the question slightly then, because
yeah,
I completely agree with what you said. I guess the kind of the more question is, right, so you need the badges to get in the door somewhere. But once you're in the door at a place like City, for instance, and your players are developing, your teams are successful to whatever definition of success that they want to use, like how much once you're in, do like do they like if they rate you as a coach, like how much do they care about what your badge is versus like I've been here for 5 years and I'm my players are developing, et cetera, et cetera. Like I guess that's more the balance of what I meant rather than like the little
yeah,
tidbits that you take from here and here. It's more of like what's the relationship like between the FA and the big like especially the big clubs because I can imagine like the other ones at like the lower levels of professional and non-league like national league and stuff like they've got standards where it's like if you're coaching this level you got to be it and the US has the same but like at the big clubs like where is that like relationship like I guess to rephrase the question.
yeah. They didn't look at it, to be honest. They know that you needed to get it. They didn't look at it. They respected that you had got it. They had to put you through it. that actually they were going to teach you how to coach their way. We always had a member of the FA attached to the club and affiliated with the club, and he was fantastic in terms of knowing what bits to drip feed from the FA and what it meant to be in an academy environment and what you had to do. And they were very, very different. You couldn't coach the FA way with inside an academy. The club want to do it their way. So you did it, and then it was kind of forgotten about, and you focused on the way that the club wanted you to coach.
Interesting. That's a bit similar to how it is here, depending on the club that you're at. Interesting. All right,
Yeah.
last city question before we spend the whole time on it. And this is kind of the fan in me, which is like how like when or if you were around the first team, whether it's shadowing the coaches that are there or getting close to like maybe like the under 23s or like like the reserve team or whatever. What sorts of things were you taking away from those coaches and players, and how difficult was it, or was it difficult rather? Because I can imagine to some extent you walk into a training session, and at that time would have been Aguero, De Bruyne, that those types, and like you walk into that and you're just like, world, everything is world class. Like, and I can imagine you walk in and you're just like, wow, just like taken by how amazing and the things that people are doing and the insights that people are saying. But like, how did you have any of those like this like welcome to City, like this is what it is moments? Did you have any of those?
Yeah, to be honest, just walking onto campus is one of those moments. Like it is from everything from the setup to the standard of the pitch to the quality of the players that you're watching to the level of coaching that's going on to the operation as a business to the operation as a club to them first team players driving past you and then academy players going up to train with the first team. We could spend the whole podcast on like wow moments of this is what it felt like, and they bred that. And I think it's something that they did so well was having the academy on the same site as the first team and the impact that that has for the highs and the lows. When the first team were doing really well, you felt the mood around the campus. When the first team were struggling or they just lost a big game, you also felt the mood around the campus. But the impact that it had on the children and the young players, you can imagine seeing their idols walking past. They've got like a big glass corridor inside the training pitch, and they would see the first team players walk out to training as they are training. And then a couple of the players would pop in after training to kick a ball around with them, or Pep would walk in and give them all a high five. Like you can imagine the
Oh,
impact that
dude,
that
that's
has
amazing.
on the players and the coaches. It was phenomenal. And all the staff members were fantastic with that. They knew this is the environment and this is the culture that we want to create. And again, massive credit to all of the academy lads that went up to the first team. They always remembered the younger ones, the eights, the nines, the tens of this is where I started my journey, and they'd always take the time to come in and spend some time with the players, with the younger ones.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, like you said, I know we could spend a whole pod on, but give one or two examples of the wow moments, just for so I can clip it. No, but seriously, though, give one or two of the wow moments, just for people listening. I think they'd be interested.
Yeah, so I think I'll never forget the first time that I was coaching. It would have been pre-academy at the time, so like under eight or maybe assisting on the under nines. It would have been around when I was doing that role. And then suddenly all of the players kind of looked at me as if I'd had two heads, and turn around and Pep is just leaning on the goalpost of one of our goals, and he just said, "Just keep playing. I just want to watch." And Eric, he must have stood there for about half an hour of just watching the kids. And then the second wow moment was when Haaland arrived. We were fortunate enough to be on the group that Haaland came in, and he spent half an hour playing with the boys, just one touch stuff and no bounce and little matches here and there. But again, like another one that jumps to mind is Jack Grealish and Phil Foden just playing crossbar challenge with the kids. Arteta, as assistant manager at the Christmas party, just started playing basketball with the kids. Like there was a basketball hoop on the wall, and off he went, just started playing with them. So there was so many touch moments of the pros being in and around the younger players and us as coaches.
That's amazing. That's really cool to hear. Like that immersive, like I mean, everything is immersed and together and seamless. And yeah, I mean, it makes you understand for the like how seamless and organized and like one unit an organization that big can be. And there's no wonder, of course, I mean, of course, the players that they have and the coaching that they have is world class. But I think people often forget the organization in the background that makes it all go. Um, oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you went from City and then you were China afterwards, or was that before?
Yeah, so it was kind of like in between, to be honest. So it was I took some time out early in my career. So again, I'd spent a few seasons at Man City already within the pre-academy phase groups, and then I got an opportunity to move abroad, and I wanted to move abroad. I wanted to immerse myself in a different culture. I was still young. I was still learning. It was something that mentors around me at the time had said, like, you need to get to different places and experience different things, different cultures. So I went and studied over in Barcelona to start with. So I went and did a course with MBP and the coach's voice. I went and did a course with them, and then I moved on to Shanghai from there and spent some time over in China. And again, Barcelona, what an experience, surrounded by just a football country that just live and breathe it, and then moving straight from there across to China to see a country that is emerging within this sport. And again, they were trying to learn what we were doing over in Europe and what they could implement. And I was fortunate enough there to spend time in the first team setup and as a first team manager there. And that's something that, again, for any young coaches listening, you don't get that opportunity over here in the UK. I was working with 8 to 11-year olds here in the UK, right? I wouldn't have got the opportunity to work first team, but having that experience just added to my skill set as a person, as a coach, to help me throughout my career.
Talk to that, both the culture shock, like hugely different culture, of course, and then also the difference of, like you mentioned, coaching kids who maybe, I mean, they're kids, so like they're goofing off sometimes or whatever, and then going to like the first team where I imagine it's not maybe the same pressure as it would be in England at the first team at City, of course, but still like it's their livelihoods. They need to win games. And also like what you're coaching is completely different. So with the kids, you're developing skills and first touch and dribbling and passing and the rest, and maybe some team shape concepts. And then the first team, as they should know how to do that already. They're professionals. So like talk about the difference in like, because I'm sure at that point you kind of taken some coaching courses on like this is how you coach that, but like once you actually step on the field and do it, it's a lot different, I would imagine. So like the culture shock of both the age group that you were coaching and then also moving to a different country, the language, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think again, like you've summed it up there, but the biggest difference was academy football was about developing the individuals to go as far in their journey as they can. First team was, if we lose 3 games in a row here, we're in trouble as a team. So like you've got to make sure that you jump on and you win. And it was all about developing that instant impact to get results. Again, a big difference from a coaching perspective was communication. You're right, kids like to goof around a little bit. They like that connection. They like to be a little bit silly at times. You speak to them in a very different manner to how you would speak to first team players. Not only that, but the translation barrier. And then at the time that I was there, we had the rules were you were allowed 4 Western players to be on the team. And again, cultural differences and politics that came into that. A lot of the time was actually spent managing like the culture and the off pitch environment
Mm.
compared to actually trying to develop them as players on the pitch. That was a big difference.
Talk to that for people that don't. I know what you mean to some
Yeah,
extent, but like expand on that.
yeah. So I mean, you summed it up right. They've already got to a certain level. It would be very hard to untrain them and train them again. They should be able to do some of the basics really well. The job was pulling the individuals together and making them operate as a unit and as a team instead of in isolation. And again, it wasn't necessarily the football ability that was on the pitch that we were focusing on because they were all at a certain level that was a fairly good level, to be fair. What we were dealing with was long days, hot weather, not getting on with each other, arguments over whatever it might be. Trying to read into the decisions that we were making as a staff of going right. This is the team that we've picked. That was the tricky bit, and again, being so young at the time, first time doing it, that's where I was learning. Like, when do I pull a player? When do I kind of lose my shit with a player? When do I relax and put my arm around a player and support them? How do I pick the team? What is the team picked up? It was all of that that was taking up my time, not necessarily the coaching elements and the tactics of things.
I'm curious just for myself on what things did you learn by trial and error and how I'm curious as to how you dealt with some of those situations, right? I think something just came out in the news, I think yesterday or today about Real Madrid and why Valverde is not playing. There's a bust up in the training room or whatever. And we also see this a little bit. There's been kind of some headlines about Arteta and Xabi Alonso, why it's like, okay, they're overcoaching the players and overtact, whatever that word is meant to be, the players and that sort of thing. And Ancelotti gets the plaudits for not coaching them but doing man management. Same with Sir Alex Ferguson. And so, like, I've been in teams where, exactly like you said, certain people don't get on. There's certain groups that don't get on with other groups, like all those sorts of things. But somehow you have, when you step on the field, when the whistle blows, you have to put a performance together. And if you don't, then losing, of course, makes everything worse.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to how you dealt with some of the situations. If maybe you can give some examples. Obviously, you don't have to name names or whatever, but like some situations that you dealt with, maybe things that went well or didn't go well. And I'm curious just for myself as a young coach, like I'm still playing, but I'm sure eventually I'll start to coach teams and stuff. But just how did you deal with that? And what are some examples of things that went well and also maybe not so well and things that you would have done differently?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it comes from you said it, trial and error. It comes from making an awful lot of mistakes and thinking, okay, that when I did this and it played out that way, I'm gonna have to learn from that. The tricky bit is that we're dealing with human beings, we're dealing with emotion. You just mentioned the feelings around winning and losing, and that had a big impact. That actually, when you do something, if that was a mistake and it had one sort of reaction or impact, you could do the same thing again and it have a different impact or a different reaction. So that was the minefield that you were operating in. Okay, I really need to get to know these individuals and the people behind the players. And I think, to be fair, I was able to fall back on the things that got is sort of trained into me from my mentors and from City, in terms of it's the person first, like focus on the player, connect with the player, work out what makes them angry, what makes them motivated, what makes them want to play for you, like develop that connection, and then you can start to layer in some of the things on top of that in terms of what it's like to play. As for like specific situations, like you've seen it, you're playing at the moment, like you walk into the changing room and there's two players that are almost like starting to fight with each other, like dealing with that. So okay, we step in the middle of it, you split it up. The one player picks half the group, the other player picks half the group, then you've got a split group, and it's like, okay, now we need to manage how we bring this back together. And this is half time, by the way. So actually, we need to get back on the pitch and we have to perform. We have to put that behind us, like you said. You have to put that face on. You have to do what you're there to do, and then you have to try and work on that away from training. Some of the good things that we did was off the pitch stuff. So just team events that again you hear about, like just going out and socializing, having a meal, going out for some drinks, like trying to get to know each other as people in a short space of time under an immense amount of pressure in terms of what you do as a role, getting results. That was interesting. How did I learn from it? Just doing it. I think it goes back to what I said at the start. Like I can't. There's no secret kind of formula that I can say out here on the camera with you to go, there you go, that's it. Like if we've got that, we'd be able to package it up and go and run whatever team we want. It was just being in the moment and learning from the things that happened.
Yeah, that's the thing with team building, isn't it? There's no one formula. You've always got a different mix of personalities that fit together in different ways, and sometimes the puzzle works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get people where they're like, I don't want to be friends with you as long as we're playing like performing, then I don't care. Like, and then that's the thing that you got to deal with, and sometimes you got to let people be that way. Um,
Yeah, that's a real. I'll
yeah.
jump in there actually because that's a really good point that we kind of hammer home. Like if you were to observe me coach, especially with younger players, it's a message that we get across to them all the time. Like you don't have to be friends with everyone here. Like especially in the academy environment, it starts early. They all know they're competing, right? There's 18 spaces at the end of the season at most, and that gets less and less as you go through the age group. So they know they're competing for spaces, but they've got to be teammates at the same time, but they've got to beat the other individuals and be better than them. So that creates a really interesting dynamic. And again, a lot of the messages that we talk about are you don't all have to like each other. You don't all have to be friends. We as adults now go through life. You don't become friends with everyone. But hopefully, again, going right back to the conversation in terms of values, you try and respect everyone. You try and understand their perspective. You try and understand where they're coming from, see what you can learn, see what you can do, and then use that to better yourself and to move forward.
Yeah.
So key messages from academy and the first team stuff I did.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Okay. Um, Anything else about the first team experience that you think we need to mention before we go back into kind of what you're up to these days or the rest of the story?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway, you asked for like wow moments from City. The biggest wow moment from first team football was the first time getting on the bus to the first game that I took charge of, and having around 8,000 crazy passionate supporters wanting you to win, and suddenly feeling like, okay, this is real. Like everything that we've just done over, I only had 10 days to kind of prepare for that first game. Everything that we've done in that first period is now come into life, and here it is. There's real people that have taken the time, that really care about the club. And again, as an academy coach at the time, I hadn't experienced anything like that. Flares, drums, flags, all for the team that you're in. That was a special moment.
Oh, that's a good point actually, and something that I forgot to mention is when my non-football playing friends are like, "Oh yeah, like college football has the craziest fans." I'm like, "No, no, go watch Greece or Turkey or any of these other people that are lighting the stadiums on fire and doing all sorts."
Yep.
Um, and so you mentioned you had 10 days to prepare. So you must have gone in mid-season then. How did you have a transfer window with that team?
No, no, no. So we did, but we had no budget as a club to go. It was kind of like, look, we came in mid-season. We've got what we've got to work with. We were acquiring some new training grounds at the time and facilities, and it was like that's where the budget is going. So you've got the group of players. You've got to work with it. We could have sourced local players, but again, the academy system was nothing like we're discussing over here. There wasn't an academy system, so that
Mm.
would have been extremely hard to find players that were ready. As a club, and again, this was a big part of my role um, in and amongst the first team stuff, was developing the academy pathway. And again, we were running young children's sessions and the academy football, but the program just was nowhere near the level of being able to get to the stage of filtering players through. So yeah, extremely difficult to work under.
Did
Here's
you
what you've
have
got, do what
any
you can with it.
outgoings that window or no?
I think we only lost two. So I think one Western player that decided to go back home, and again,
Uh-huh.
just personal reasons he went, and then one local player. So yeah, we lost two, but apart from that, the group kind of stayed the same.
So just talk to, even though you only lost two, and obviously you mentioned you didn't have any incoming transfers. Talk to like when what it would be like to you receive a bid from a player or for a player. Like how does that and I imagine based on kind of the level that you're talking at, the obviously not crazy transfer fees or anything like that, but
Yeah,
talk to kind of the squad planning process now you're at because now not that you can go out and get players, but like it's a different sort of level where you were stuck with it in that perspective. But like maybe if you had stayed an extra season, like the squad planning process, you're like, okay, we've lost these two defenders, so we need to bring in another one. We're missing a backup striker, whatever the case may be. Is talk to like how that would actually work in the first team environment.
yeah. I mean, we knew we had limited resources. We knew that we had to work with what we had to work with, and there was two options. It was to either be negative that we had nothing to bring in and nothing that we could improve in that way, or to realize what we had and fine tune it and get the best out of what we had. We were really keen to try and get two people in each position, so we at least had that competition for places, and we were really keen to make sure that the Western players didn't just get priority because that they were part of the team, in terms of you're allowed four of them, so use all four all the time. It was like if they're not performing, we'll be able to fill in with local players as well. So it was trying to create that friction and that tension, but in a positive way. That element of competition that you're all driving towards each other. And again, then you've got to deal with like, okay, well this player's injured or he's not performing well, so actually then we've got to rotate positions slightly and what that looks like. And again, this is what I mean, that the amount of time that he's actually spent delivering and on the grass and that was actually pretty easy, like, and enjoyable. The bits off of the pitch is where I was learning so much of going, okay, what does this look like?
So why or what you've gone a very different path since then in terms of you're not within a professional organization. You're kind of off doing your own thing, which the content is great. But where was that in your head of like you didn't enjoy the experience, you enjoyed the experience, but you didn't want more? Like at that point, you probably would have had some opportunities, I would imagine, given you have Manchester City on your resume, you have now a first team on your resume, you've got the course in Barcelona, you've got XYZ badges on your resume. Somebody probably would have taken a chance on you as a first team coach somewhere, I would imagine. So where is that in your own kind of journey? Like, what was the thought process behind yay or nay? Was the right opportunity not there, or like, what was the thought
Yeah.
process there?
Yeah, so to be honest, very little thought process. COVID had a massive impact on, okay, this is
Mm.
what's happening. This it came in and it stopped everybody, didn't it? For that time, I came back to the UK. Whilst I was back in the UK, again, was working with Man City again. Things were progressing there. Like they were fantastic with me in terms of development. Like the agreement was go and do your masters. The agreement was go and do some things overseas, but we'd like you to come back. And if you do come back and you work hard and you make the opportunities, there'll be future things here for you. And that's where I ended up jumping back into Man City and over like that COVID period. And after that was part time and full time at the club within the foundation phase again for Man City. So that's kind of how that journey did a full circle. And then to the point where I'm at now, it is focused on my own stuff. Kind of came from a selfish point of view that I wanted to try and develop my network. I wanted to try and really see if I had learned the things that I think I've learned on the pitch. And I think the best way of knowing that is to try and teach it to other people and really then understand the next level of like, what is it that I know really well and what is it that I still don't know? And again, you hear this all the time amongst coach educators and educators in general. The more you think you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I've really enjoyed connecting with coaches and just trying to teach and have these conversations and add value where I can. And to be honest, there it snowballed. It wasn't a thought process. It wasn't a plan. I put some clips up online whilst I was still doing all my roles. People said, that's good content. You're pretty good at this. Why don't you do some more? And then it's led to conversations like you and I are having now. It's led to me developing the packages that I've got online for coaches to jump into and kind of develop themselves. But it's come from me just kind of throwing a couple of videos up and sharing some thoughts about, okay, I think people could learn from this and let me selfishly make sure I've learned it by trying to teach it.
Yeah, makes total sense. Okay, so you mentioned the packages. So why don't you give the overview of what it is that you actually offer and are doing currently? Because I think there's probably some people doing what you're doing, but it's a little bit different than I think most of the other kind of the trainers on social media or whatever are doing. It's slightly different. So kind of give the details there, what the packages are, what you're actually offering, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so again, I'm putting together content that focuses on how to coach and in detail of what I learned from my experiences and insights across the last 15 years of coaching. I think there's so much content out there at the moment in terms of what to do. And to be honest, it becomes so overwhelming. So many coaches are in my inbox and speaking to me on a regular basis. And the clients that I have now are working with me and kind of going, I'm just overwhelmed with what to do. I know what drills to do. I know what I should be doing in terms of minutes and rotations and no lines and principles to focus on. But how do you actually do it and how do you implement it? And I'd like to think that from the experience that I've got, I can start to help people on how to implement that with their own players in their own environment. So I very much focus on how to do it, not what to do. There's two ways of working with me. It's in the group setting, so it's like a 90-day coach accelerator, which is development wise, and then a one-to-one package that again I speak to coaches depending on where they're at in their journey, what that looks like for them. And then again, I'm always going to pump out as much free stuff as I can, and that goes a long way. And I have had so much interaction off of the free stuff of just going, I've watched that 30-second video and it's really helped me. Fantastic. If you can take bits from that and implement it, and that means that you can help players, brilliant.
What have you learned and are kind of coaching or helping implement um, from the leadership perspective? Because there's always people that everyone who's listening, you and I have both interacted with, where you're like, yeah, what you're saying makes sense, but I don't want to listen to you because of, and then you can't like put your finger on it. And then there's also people that you're like, I don't really know if that makes sense, but I'm going to do it anyways because and then you can't put your finger on it. And like that's sort of a weird intangible thing that I mean, there's been a whole industry made of this. There's the amount of leadership courses and other things that you can go to are like I mean, infinite. You type in leadership course and there's a gazillion things that pop up. But it's a little bit different when you're on the field because, or on the pitch, because there's different ways to sort of command that respect, as you mentioned before. So, what are some of the things from that perspective? Because you mentioned you're telling people how to do it, not what to do, and that's a big part of how to be effective. If nobody wants to listen to you, then it doesn't matter what or how you're doing it. Like it's not going to work. So, what's from the kind of intangible perspective are you teaching, and what are some of the things that you've learned over your career?
I think the big thing is making it about them. Like, make it about the individual that you're working with. They don't want to know what you've done. That will come at some point. They want to know that you've got the right credentials and the right knowledge to be able to help them. But first and foremost, they're focused on themselves. They want to know what you can do for them. What can they learn from you to help them develop? All about them. So it's making an individual experience for them, and then it goes back to what we said with the players, and I think it's very, very similar. And again, that's why I'm having such traction with the conversations that I'm having. Is it's connection. What is it that they need? What have I got that I can put into place and around them to support them, and then how can I speed that up for them? So there's very few scenarios, even from this conversation that you and I have had this evening, in terms of look at the amount of experience that we've got here. There's very little things that I haven't been exposed to. But if I haven't been exposed to it, I know people that have, and I can just speed that development process up for you. So if it took me 2 years, I could probably do it for you in 2 months or 2 weeks, or I can help you skip some of those longer term to speed up that development. But nothing will ever replace practice time on the pitch, and it is a long journey. Like, for any coaches listening, how do I develop? What does that look like? It's a long journey and it's time spent on the pitch. But to loop that back round to the leadership, focus on what they want and build that connection with them. And then it's trust and credibility.
How do you help the coaches exemplify that to their own players?
Yeah, good question. Again, it's helping them understand what is it that each individual needs within the group. So I think a really good coach can facilitate a learning environment, something that looks professional, something that helps develop the players involved. But what a world class coach does is connect with the individuals and develop them at the right moment in the right way. Some will need challenging, some will need more support, and it'll keep changing through and through. So build that connection, then show your knowledge and share that, and develop that over time.
There's always a point in podcasts like this where you kind of get to like the it depends on the person as is the answer. However, I'm going to ask the question anyways, which is what are some things that you tell coaches to look for as far as what you mentioned is the developing the player at the right time in the right way? Obviously, it depends on the player and what they need, that individual. But you and I both probably know that there's some markers that you can look for you're seeing this within in their game. Now it's time to take the next step of now we're going to add in more detail into whatever this skill is, or maybe we're going to take a step back and focus on this foundational piece a little bit more. What are some of those things that you tell coaches as far as things to look for, triggers to watch for, um, different, yeah, different things of that nature where it's like you can look for these four symptoms,
Yep.
for lack of a better word, and that means you should maybe try blank.
Yep. I'm not going to focus on anything technical or tactical here. So we all know those bits. And again, you've got to have them. You've got to be physical, you've got to be technical, you've got to have that mental bit. But what jumps to mind here is like, can they learn? Can they train? Can they compete? They're the three things that I'd be looking at. Like, good listeners and good learners. Are they absorbing the knowledge within the session? Are they tuned in to what the coach is saying? Are they remembering the things that happened last week and building on that this week? Are they coming with that understanding that I am here to learn and I am here to develop? And then that links on to learning to train. Like, I'm not just here to play. Yes, there's going to be moments of enjoyment. Yes, there's going to be moments that I can just switch off, especially with the youngsters. Like, they've got to enjoy it. But they also understand that I'm here to get better, that I'm here to train. And training in itself can sometimes be very uncomfortable. There's pressure, there's mistakes, there's things that we don't really want to do, there's physical exertion that you've got to take. it can be uncomfortable. So I've got to learn what training is. And the reward actually comes from learning the thing and being successful at it when I was failing at it to start with. And then learning to compete. I think all of the academy kids that I've worked with, they want to compete. It's in them. It's internal in terms of like, I'm here, I want to be the best. I'm competing against myself, I'm competing against the group, I'm competing against everybody that might be out there in the world. I'm hungry to be the best version of me on and off the pitch and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I try and sum that up. Not
Yeah.
so much technical stuff.
No, that makes total sense. And I was gonna add to that, like with the young ones that I train, I turn everything into some sort of game or competition. And then the ones that, and half the time they don't know that they're learning a skill, which is
Yeah.
means you're doing something right, because then otherwise they'd be bored. Um, but yeah, I am curious. Actually, let's do this. Let's do it in this order. So tell the people where they can go find you, and then I've got some questions for you that normally I do this at the end, but I've got some questions for you about the coaching badges that if people who are listening are coaches are interested in, feel free to stay for the last however long. But otherwise, tell the people where they can find you and your stuff, and if they're interested in working with you, like where should they go?
Yeah, perfect. So honestly, at Olly Porteus across all social media. So that's the best place to find me. At Olly Porteus. And again, all of the information, the free content, and some of the group stuff and the one-to-one support that I've mentioned are on my profiles there.
Okay, perfect. For those listening, links will be in the description. Normally, this is where we wrap up, but like I said, got some other deep dive questions. So, coaches, if you're interested, stick around for a little bit. Other of you who are just interested in knowing what Holland was like, well, you can turn off if you want. Buy merch in the description. Okay. Anyways, so the coaching badges in the so I'm going for my D in the U.S. right now, which I think. So the C in the US, I think, is the equivalent to the UEFA D, if I've got it. It's something like that. But anyways,
Yep.
when you're going through the badges, so like we've got grassroots here, which is like they split it up into like the age groups of like 4v4 and 7v7, 9v9, 11v11, different principles. What is that like in England slash Europe? Like the progression of like what are you learning generally speaking as you go through the badges?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, level one is very much about introductory, keep everybody safe. That's level one. Keep
Hmm.
everybody safe, make sure everyone has fun. Level two is kind of, okay, make sure that we're leading the session, that there's some coaching going on now. You're competent, you can help players move and develop as a group. And then as you get into kind of like level three, that's like the B license, like the minimum level that you would need to get into academy football. So it starts to look at what is it to develop players in that environment as a team. And some of the other factors like delving deeper into practice design and how to link sessions together, and then focusing on like coaching elements of like on the ball, around the ball, away from the ball, the primary players, the secondary players, the tertiary players. Some finer details come into it. And then then you jump into the A license, and that's when you start to work with the top end of YDP and your professional phase before jumping into the pro license.
Okay. So where along the line do you, or I guess, do you slash other coaches that you've worked with, there's a part in a player's development where like they need to be understanding the tactics, but they might still have some holes in their technical game. How do you where they can't execute the tactical stuff that they need to because there's still a hole, but they maybe are super fast and so you or whatever, like they've got the physical attributes, they've got something where they can still play at that level, but there's like varying holes in whatever the case maybe is, or maybe there's holes in the tactical level or whatever. How do you kind of get everybody to like get up to a certain minimum whilst making the rest of the session interesting for the rest of the players? Like, because you don't want to be at the low end, but you don't want to be at the upper end where maybe the kid that doesn't understand the tactics at all is completely lost. You have to like keep it somewhere. Like, how do you kind of, as you're planning practices, like what sorts of things are you looking at and concepts are you looking at to bring everybody up to speed where they need to be, but also like how do you fit that in, like especially specifically with like the under 14s is the team that comes to mind for that question.
Yeah. So I think again, some coaches will agree with this, some won't. I very much believe in kind of pouring in from the top and making sure that if we pour in from the bottom, the chances are that I'm going to bring some of the top players down to that level, and I don't actually give the players at the bottom opportunity to rise because we've pitched it at their level. If I pour in from the top, then I'm setting the standard and I'm hopefully bringing others up. Now, if they come all the way up, fantastic. But we know reality, some of them might not come all the way up. And then it starts to become like that individual coaching with inside the group. So if you're one of the top players, I might throw 3 or 4 coaching points at you within the same drill that we're doing. But then I might go and speak to one of the weaker players and say, here's 2 points. And if you can just learn those 2 points this week, they'll be developing and they'll be learning within that drill. So you try and pick your battles of, okay, what information are you going to throw? And again, I use the term kind of drive-by coaching or fly-by coaching. I think that's something that a lot of coaches refer to. Get the drill started, get everyone moving, and then do your fly-by coaching. Like walk past players and speak to them individually, and that's when you can throw those coaching points at them.
Mm,
And then the tactical thing, and we actually spoke about this when we were on the phone offline in terms of making sure that you implement that with the younger age groups. Like everything is tactical when they're playing a match. Just make it age appropriate. So if the 5-year-olds talk about why are we standing in a triangle? Well, because that makes the pitch big. Perfect. That's the tactics. Why are we all running this way? Because we're trying to score a goal. If we score more goals, we win. Perfect. That's the tactics for that age. And you've said it already. You make it fun, so they don't even realize that they're learning those principles of like everybody spread out and who can be the furthest away from the coach. Perfect. What's the pitch? It's big. So you do it in a fun, age appropriate way. For the older ones that you're talking about, you try and pitch it in a level in terms of this is what you need to know, this is what you have to know, and this is what you still don't know. And I have to get you to that point if you want to go through your journey. So focus on the bits that you know and execute them, but make sure you're listening to me to get you to the next level.
that's fair enough. When I was doing one of my kind of the prerequisites to the D and to the D license, we basically had a 10 minute. The instructor would watch us coach, and one of the things that license is interesting because you've in the U.S. like there's some just like dads who are coaching their kids' teams that are there just to have it, and then there's other people that were players and now are trying to get into. So you get a very big mix of like of that, and so it's like yeah, like you mentioned, like you spread out or shapes and different things. The last sort of question I had as far as player development and getting somebody prepared for the first team, I guess when they're in the under 14s, they're like right on the edge of like I would imagine, depending on the player, they're right on the edge of like the first team has now have their eye on maybe the top 1 or 2 of that age group. And in terms of giving those players a springboard to like really make the most of that potential opportunity, like get them into maybe they're 15 and they have a chance with the U18s or something like that. How do you how does that work within the academy as far as players going between teams or you as a coach like saying, okay, my team is at this level, but these 2 players or whatever, like they need the springboard, so I'm going to give them extra or like how does that work within an academy setup like that?
Yeah, again, it's very individualized. So again, like sometimes it was the springboard, it was a catalyst in the players' development in playing them up. But then the flip version of that, sometimes it was a catalyst and it helped speed up development by keeping the players in their age group
Hmm.
or playing down. And again, I think I think there's a bit of a stereotype, especially like in the parent world of academy football, of like, oh, my son or daughter are playing up an age group. That means that we're doing the best and that we're getting opportunities. We really didn't view it like that. It's what was right for the individual in that moment. Some of them grew physicality wise, so they needed to play a year up so that they were competing a little bit more physically than they were with the right age group. Some of them needed to kind of just play down and have that like confidence of I'm now the oldest, I can be a bit of a leader, I can be the best on the ball, I can have loads of success to be their springboard. So it wasn't kind of like just playing up. Sometimes it was right to play up. Sometimes it was right to stay at your age group. Sometimes it was right to play down. And all of that was like, okay, what can we do here to help them go as far as we can? As a coach, and you know this, and everyone listening knows this, we want to help the players the best that we can. That's what we're there to do. How do we help them all? I don't mind if you're playing up or down. How can I help you develop? That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about there. And then the thing that stood out with when you're asking that question again, jumped to mind is like mentality. That is really like the edge. When they get to under 14s at the academy level that I've been fortunate enough to be around, and again, I never coached under 14s at City, but observing that level, they all have the technical physicality foundations. They've all got to that point. Can they now start to understand the game tactically? And then more importantly, can they wrap all three of those things up and go and do it in the moment when it counts in game day? That's what stood the difference between those that went further and those that didn't.
Yeah. All right, I've got no, you gotta get out of here, but I got two more questions, if you got the time. The first
Yeah.
is when you talk about players moving up and down, how cohesive is that like as an organization? Are you guys having like coaching meetings amongst like let's say you're at the under 14s, are you having meetings with the under 12s, 13s, 15s, 16s like to be like, hey, we think that this player would be best served by going down, do you have a spot? Like how is the organ from an organizational perspective? Because it's very easy to say like, oh, I think this one player could do better if they went up or whatever, but to do that across an entire organization requires a level of like you need to know where everybody's at and what their
Yeah.
like what their pathway is and all those sorts of things. So how did that work?
Yeah, you were on the phone every minute of the day. And you were talking about football after every session. You were talking about who were the top three players tonight, who were the three players that were struggling, who were the three players that we need to try and help a little bit more in this area or that area, who were three players that might need help in terms of off the pitch stuff. We were talking 24/7 about what the group needed. What did it look like? And again, I can speak firsthand for pre-academy and foundation phase. The YDP, again, they will have done very similar things to us, but you spoke to your age group coach, so there was you always coached in pairs. You spoke on a daily, if not an hourly basis, and everything about football. Then as a departments like pre-academy foundation phase, you were speaking also daily after sessions and in meetings together. And then as foundation groups, you were then speaking on a weekly basis of okay, what does this look like? And we did like mid-season and end of season reviews, and that's where all key stakeholder staff came together. It wasn't just the coaches; it was everybody that had been involved in that player's journey. Let's have a discussion. Let's see what we think is right for them.
That makes sense. Lastly, in terms of once they get into like mid-teenage years, at what point does the sort of the fitness training side of things come in? They're in the gym more, and then alternatively, in terms of the development of the player, but as an individual as well, where are you guys, or how did it work for? Because I imagine if you get up to like the under 18s at City, you probably have a fairly good chance of going professional at some level somewhere. Oh, he left. Sad. You're good. All good.
It,
Um,
it got
and
to the hour and it cut off on its own.
yeah, in terms of preparing for like, because I imagine once you get up to the under 18s, you have a fairly good shot of playing professional and so, at some level somewhere. Um, but in terms of preparing the players for life outside of football, should that not be the route that they go, like where does that sort of like the rest of the like holistic development sort of kick in, and how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, the holistic development, especially here in the UK, has kicked on massively just in my time in academy football. So if you look at that a bigger scope, like it has completely transformed over the years and the decades. It happens from day one. Like honestly, as soon as you arrive at the club, staff are thinking about okay, what does this journey look like? How do we help the people develop? Education across the younger groups is a massive driver. Like I kid you not, the education department run the decisions. Like when they're training, when they play, like education matters and it is driven all the way through to things like healthy eating, understanding lifestyle in terms of what do I do with finances and how do I get a house and how do I apply for a job. All of those things are spoken about, and again, the support that is given to the players around that has transformed over the recent years.
Awesome. Awesome. That makes total sense. Well, I very much appreciate your time. I know you got to run. Olly Porteus, for those who want to learn more, links will be in the description. Any last kind of thoughts before we get you out of here?
No, just a thank you for you. Again, it's been a long time coming, some good conversations and enjoyed it. So thank you for having me on. And hopefully those listeners found value in our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for listening. Check the links out in the description. Buy some things, merch, shirts, and stuff down there. And we will see you guys next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.